The last few years have been an eye-opener for many of us who lived in a time of relative peace and stability, but it's the next few years that are really beginning to concern me. If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Now I'll tell you up front, this video is not scripted. I did put together some ideas of what I wanted to discuss. There's been some things that have concerned me as of late, and really what I want to do is speak on these issues that I actually addressed in a newsletter recently. And before we jump in, let me just give you a quick update. I did stop doing the news a few weeks ago, and I usually would give an update from time to time in those news segments about what I'm doing around the property at my house for projects. And one of those was a hydroponic setup that I've been talking about doing in a grow shed. Still working on that. I've gotten behind, but that is still on my radar. So I apologize for those that have been asking about that. So let's go ahead and jump into the main meat of this content. The last few years, they've obviously been a difficult time for many of us that have come into this community, or those that have really woken up to the reality of the changing the world, let's just put it that way, that we're living in. And we've moved into a time where it feels like where there's a bit of heat that's kind of simmering under the surface. We don't see the typical things that we would see on the news a few years ago, the violence in the streets, the events of, that were playing out, the COVID issues. And we're beginning to now see this, or rather not see, the issues that almost feel like they're under the surface. There's this sense of unease that people are upset. I often read in my comments, I try to pay attention to what the community is saying. And there's some concern, I'll put it that way, individuals within this community. And there's a sense of, again, unease, there's frustration. I hate to say anger, but there is some of that. And if I'm just being honest, the issues causing people's frustrations that many of us are experiencing are probably going to be increasing in the coming years. We are watching the economy that's already difficult at the moment. People are getting squeezed out. Inflation is kicking people's teeth in between food, housing, electricity, gas. I mean, we can go on and on, but people are being squeezed. And are things going to get any more affordable anytime soon? Well, I think you probably know the answer to that. And what we're doing is we're living in this time of extremes. We're watching the rich continue to get richer. For the most people, it feels like the system is stacked against them. And I'm not to say, hey, I'm against people getting wealthy. That's not my issue. But whenever you begin to see this clear separation between the haves and the have-nots, we're watching the middle class in America at least getting decimated. And I guess it could be summarized as saying the divide in our own country, and I know this is not just unique to America, but for the world for that matter, people are watching this divide that's only deepening. To top it all off, our political system is in shambles. The hate and animosity, unfortunately, is prevailing in so many of the discussions in the forums. And the tension and the anger, it seems palpable. You can almost feel it in the air. It's like you can cut it with a butter knife, right? But here's my primary concern at the moment. It's in these moments like these that it's easy for others to prey upon people's pent-up anger, for someone else, or rather for someone to come in and begin to point the finger at others, say they're the ones that are at fault. They're causing this problem. It's always in the moments like these that you hear the voices, the radical voices call out to capitalize on people's frustration, their hurt, and their anger. And it's this rhetoric, this call for violence, this uptick in the discussion of even civil war. I've been seeing various politicians begin to openly discuss this. And whenever I begin to see that blaming of others, that's when I personally begin to get concerned. If we've learned anything from the last few years, it's that people are impressionable. Hate divides, and it's very, very popular. Now, before you begin to ask, where am I going with this? Just hear me out. Look, I struggle listening to the news at times because of the agenda, the hate, the blaming of others, this constant underlying narrative that just is continually fed to us that someone is causing this. This is, it almost feels like there's a whisper at times in our ear that, just constantly stoking that fear. One of the things that you've probably heard before is past is prologue, and the foundation only seems to be set for these issues that I brought up to worsen over the years. And before I continue, let me say this. I've seen firsthand what a breakdown in culture looks like when people begin to turn on each other. I've shared this many times on the channel before, and I'll bring it up here again. My experience, briefly, I'll mention in Afghanistan. I was there 20 years ago in 2003, working with a humanitarian group providing medical relief and educational relief in Kabul, Afghanistan. I served there for 3 months, just trying to help the people the best I can. And you know, I saw firsthand what it looks like when that division comes into a nation. Obviously, that is the end result, and I'm not suggesting that America is on that path, but the parallels are very concerning, I'll put it that way. And whenever I hear these voices, these individuals that cry out for retribution, anger, you know, to stoke people's animosity and fear toward the other people, and they begin to call out for, again, I'll use the word civil war. When I begin to hear people talk like this openly, I always ask the question, who are they suggesting goes to war on their behalf? Who, these individuals that are calling for it, who ultimately pays the price is what I'm asking here. It's not the ones who call for it. It's the people that ultimately have to go into these engagements, go into these situations where their lives are sacrificed. And I always ask the question when I hear people talk like this, who are we targeting? What do I mean by that? Look, I've got friends, family that are of different views politically and so many other views, but do I really feel the need to take out hostility and anger toward them? Who is telling me that these other individuals are my enemy? Just follow with me here for a second. This pent-up anger, this animosity, it's corrosive. But as a prepper, and the point of this channel is I always try to listen to, you know, I try to see which way the wind's blowing. I try to listen, keep my ear to the ground to understand, because what is happening, at least in my country here in America at the moment, is there's this, again, this undercurrent of tension, of anger, and it's there. It's, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's palpable. And I always try to be careful to understand what's going on. And I always, with this channel, want to steer every conversation and every issue I see back to one thing. What is the solution? And here's my advice, and here's my encouragement. Be careful what the sources are that you're listening to. I know we did a weekly news segment, and a lot of people have been reaching out saying, hey, we miss it. We love the unbiased view that you had and brought. When are you going to bring that back? There's something I'm working on, and there's a reason that we put that on hold for a little while, and I'll explain that here in a few weeks. But all that to say, be careful who you're listening to, what sources. Here's always a tell. Here's always, you know, when someone is trying to feed you propaganda, is when any information comes from an angle of stoking you up emotionally. Usually 99% of the time, it's that poker that's being stuck in your side that's filling you with hate, that they're stirring up some emotion. That's always a tip-off that someone's trying to manipulate me. I mean, time and time again. And I hear this all the time when I see this, or rather I see this when I go to various news sources, whether left or right, and I look and I try and understand. There's always this voice, right? This agenda that's, hey, they're the bad guys. They're the ones that's doing. And when I see that, that's always an automatic tell that whenever I hear this us versus them being taught or being preached to me, that is a red flag. I know someone is trying to manipulate and trying to fire me up to anger, and it's just propaganda. And yes, look, I understand that the people we've elected are not representing us. I'm saying all this because I know that there is frustration in this country, that some of it is justified, but let me caution you to be careful not to use that anger and turn on your neighbor. And I'm not suggesting we turn on anybody for that matter. If you want to turn your anger to anything, go to the ballot, go to the voting, go to vote when that time comes. Take your anger out peacefully by voting. But my encouragement, and the point I'm trying to make full circle in this video, and the solution I'm trying to drive home to in this video, is my encouragement to this community is to build a community, work with others. Communities, they always thrive. And I know this is a discussion that comes up all the time in our channel, or rather our community, about the issue of lone wolf versus a community. And there's a big disparity between those two. It seems like it's binary, one or the other. But my encouragement, I saw this, and I've seen this firsthand living in third world nations, living in developing nations. Those that have others around them, whether it's family, friends, and it's usually 9 out of 10 times family, but those that have built community, they thrive. And my encouragement to you is protect your relationships with family, friends, and neighbors. Look, as I mentioned earlier, I have friends and family with various political opinions. I value my relationships with them more than being right. What am I saying? It's easy, and again, my personality is such that I have some very strong views on a lot of things. And those that know me, when they get around me, especially if I've got a couple of drinks in me, I will, those views tend to come out a little more. So I have to be careful who I drink around or who I'm around when I'm a lot more relaxed. I'll put it that way, because I don't want to allow that as become a tool to divide and form a wedge in relationships. It's something I have to guard against, because I would rather keep relationships and try to start a fight over my view being right, is what I'm trying to say. So there's three practical things, three practical encouragements that I have for this community. I would encourage, first, listen and learn from others with opposing views. And I know that's hard for a lot of people watching that. A lot of us have strong views in this community. I get that and I respect that. But when I genuinely listen to others and their views, it's always fascinating what I learn from them. There's a lot of commonality that we have. It's just expressed differently a lot of times. My second encouragement is strive to find common ground. And at the end of the day, people want the same thing. They want to be able to take care of their family. They want to be able to put food on the table. They want to keep a roof over their head. I watched this, again, getting back to the example I shared a second ago about Afghanistan. I watched this firsthand when I lived there, sitting in people's homes, listening to their stories. When we invaded Afghanistan, the whole argument was, hey, we got to kick the Taliban out, etc. And when I would go into the common person's home, they too were frustrated with the individuals that had come in and taken over their nation. And they would just wanted the same thing, to be able to take care of their families. My third encouragement to you is remember that serving others breaks down barriers. What do I mean by that? I've learned this recently, even more and more with my neighbors. We had the hurricane that came, it turned out to be just nothing more than a rainstorm by the time it hit my area. But I went around, I checked all the neighbors, made sure they were ready, asked, hey, is there anything I can do to serve you? There was individuals that I gave some stuff to make sure they were taken care of in case the power went down, make sure they had water backup, etc. And what I've done is I've built relationships with a lot of neighbors around my neighborhood. A lot of them, we don't share political views. Some of them we do. But at the end of the day, for example, we had a party at my house about 3 weeks ago, and it was awesome because seeing these individuals from so many different backgrounds, so many of us different beliefs, but at the end of the day, we're just individuals that want to take care of our family. Now, that's what I've found to be common ground. So my encouragement in this last point is serve others wherever you can and how you can. I know that's not a popular message in our community at times, but the point I'm trying to make in all this, and kind of put a bow on this as I wrap it up, is that community, those relationships, those individuals that you build with can be key allies and valuable if something goes sideways in your community. I know we often like to dream and envision ourselves as these lone wolf individuals, kind of a Rambo style, just going out guns blazing. But look, at the end of the day, I realize if things were to go sideways in a major way in my community, I'm going to be relying on my neighbors, and I think vice versa. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Feel free to post them below. And again, I always enjoy learning from you, the community. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I know this is hopefully not a rambling video, but it's just something that's been on my heart. And it's just been concerning me, I'll put it this way, as I look across the country that I love, my community, and I find that it's so easy to listen to the voices of division and hate. And I'm always so cautious when I hear someone starting up some argument online, watching the news, watching a YouTube video where someone starts with the premise that they're out to get us. They're doing this to us. It's always just manipulation. I would encourage you to be careful with that. As always, stay safe out there.